Hey, welcome to Graphic Policy Television GPTV. I'm Brett, and my hands is History Comics Ellis Island from First Second. This is a really educational, fantastic graphic novel that's rather, great timing in its release. Written by Felipe, Galindo, Feggo, and art by Tait Howard. It is the history of Ellis Island. What a shock with the title of Ellis Island. So, I'm pretty sure I visited Ellis Island at one point in a trip to New York City. I vaguely remember, the fundraising and the restoration of Ellis Island in the 80s and 90s. I remember that being a big thing and, the big celebration when it was reopened. I'm pretty sure I had family that went through it. It says, 40% of Americans had family that went through Ellis Island. It's kind of a pretty key thing. So this is the full history of Ellis Island. It's actually really educational, taking us through the beginning of when the island and the land was obtained from the indigenous people that lived there, to the people who owned it, the hands of different passed along, which was, I thought, really interesting, and then it eventually winding up in the hands of the U.S. government, and then the battle between New York and New Jersey to figure out who owns what. There's also a little bit of history of the Statue of Liberty, because let's face it, when it comes to Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty kind of has, entwined history, and one is kind of really thought of as the other, with the other. But this is the full history of it. It goes through statistics about how many people came to Ellis Island, the process, the expansions of it, where it is today, all set in the backdrop of Hurricane Sandy. And that's the thing that I really kind of like about a lot of the history comics, is sometimes it'll take you to that moment and take you through the history as if it was going on, but many of them are people reflecting and talking about the history, and that's what this one is. Takes place during Hurricane Sandy. Power goes out, and a woman whose job it is to be a tour guide for Ellis Island tells the story of Ellis Island to her son and some neighbors, and basically gives them a tour of Ellis Island while they wait out the storm. And in that way, it's really cool, because at the end of it, it lays out how Ellis Island was damaged by that storm and the work it had to do to fix it. It's a really educational graphic novel, and, it touches upon a lot of the changes of the history of the island, how it was used, and perceptions of it. We don't use it today for immigration, and it puts out a really great question: is do immigrants have the same connection with Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty as those who came across on boats, and that was their kind of introduction to the United States? And I think that's a really interesting thing that I've never thought about before. The other is, it kind of shows us the turbulent times that is the United States when it comes to immigration. We are, again, in a very xenophobic period of American history, and that xenophobia has changed over the years. There was a point where I think it said half the people coming across and immigrating was Irish, and then there was another point where Irish basically weren't allowed. There was a point where people were fighting for basically to block anyone that wasn't Northern European. There was points where there was a heavy amount of people from Canada and Australia and Africa and South America and other countries that were not European, and the attitudes of individuals when it came to that has changed over the year, and we're seeing that again. So while the graphic novel isn't preachy about who's right, who's wrong, it reminds us that our history seems to be rather cyclical. I also thought was interesting was the amount of individuals it talks about were processed through it. In the years that it was open, I think it says 12 million individuals or something like that actually went through it, and the highest amount ever was a little over 1 million. To put in perspective, the people going off about the southern border, I think that the peak was roughly maybe 2 million a year. So somehow in 120 years, we were able to, with all our technological advances, are able to process fewer people to take care of them and handle them, which kind of shows you how much bullshit a lot of this is, and it's just a not wanting to do, but that's me preaching. I also think it's really interesting. It talks about just immigration as a whole, that not everybody migrated or immigrated here through Ellis Island or the various ports that existed on the west coast or north or south. That some people, literally, the land moved on them. One person in this, his history is his family lived in Texas. Well, what is Texas today? But Texas today used to be Mexico, and then it was an independent nation. Then it became part of the United States. So he talks about is that, you know, immigration isn't all just people coming on boats, that some people wound up here not of their choice. Literally, the borders changed overnight on them. And I think it's really interesting to kind of emphasize that, is that, you know, there are various different stories when it comes to people's immigration and history. And, you know, and again, it brings up that fact of 40% of Americans have a connection to Ellis Island. I think that's a really, really interesting fact. And I'm positive, you know, I'm one of those Americans. I'm one of that 40%. So yeah, I mean, I think it's educational. It's really just a reminder of, there was a period where we did welcome people in, and it was not maybe the smoothest of things. You know, we did kick people out, but it even says that only 2% of the people that wound up at Ellis Island were denied and sent back. And these were people who were criminals, who had health issues, that there was a reason to send them back. It wasn't just because of the whim of some politician or xenophobic asshole. That there were rules. It also goes into like the staffing of it, and you know, kind of the little process of how to get through, and just generally what it was like for first class versus steerage class. And to me, I thought it was really interesting. Like, it really is an educational graphic novel, and it takes you through the history of Ellis Island and some of the immigration story of the United States. So there's some material in the back. The author has a bit about their family history, or the artist has a bit about actually both have a bit of their family history. And yeah, it's good. Like, I think it's educational, it's entertaining, it's good art. It's a reminder of you know, when the United States really was a land of opportunity for many, and they did see us as a beacon of hope. So go read it and remind yourself of that. So check this out. I think it's a really good graphic novel to get the basics of Ellis Island. You know, it might not go into depth, but I think it's got a good overview of all the history. And again, it's a lot of stuff that I didn't remember. Some of it I did. Very, very educational stuff. Great read. Go get this out in shops. We got a link beneath this video. Put in your zip code to tell the comic shops near you. No shop, no problem. We should have some of the links underneath this video. There'll be affiliate links, so you do get a small percentage, and by doing that, you help support our site. So thank you. And speaking of support, I want to thank First Second for hooking us up with the review copy. And, of course, thank you all for watching. If you are into graphic novels, check us out every day at graphicpolicy.com. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, Instagram, TikTok, Mastodon, Threads, Blue Sky, all at Graphic Policy, keeping it nice and consistent. Till next time, keep reading those comics, and keep it geeky. Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.